The year is 1959. Two students, one a mechanical engineer and the other a neuroscientist, are out and having a few beers. After about the fourth pint, they head home to their apartment and watch some television. A documentary about the sirens used in London during World War II pop up and gives Josh, the neuroscientist, a crazy thought. "Hey Chris, wouldn't it be crazy if those sirens had a body?" asks Josh. They exchange quick glares and then burst out in laughter. "Would be crazy frightening though," says Chris. The next morning, the two head out to class. Josh has a class about the theory of brain transplant and the obstacles that prohibit it from being possible. He then started to imagine combining man and machine. After obsessing about it for the entire day, Josh asks Chris if he had ever thought about merging man with machine. "Yeah, I've thought about it once or twice." "Why?" "No, it was just a thought," replied Josh. The next day at uni, Chris gets an assignment which involves the creation of a mechanical walking machine. That evening, Chris tells Josh about his assignment and if Josh would be willing to help him with it. Josh agrees to help. The next Saturday morning, Chris and Josh get to work on the project. It starts with Chris creating the legs, which he wants to look like large human bones. He wants them to be tall so that his project could stand out in his class. Halfway through the day, they realize they need some more space, so they take a trip to Josh's grandfather's farm. There, they continue working on the mechanized legs. The next day, Chris continues working on the project, while Josh helps here and there. The evening, Josh asks if he can maybe add an abdomen to the project. After some hesitation, Chris approves the idea. So Josh went out to work on the torso. He gets the idea of creating a skin-like torso, which can thus fulfill his fantasy of creating a half-biological, half-mechanized creature. He puts a lot of thought into how and what skin he should use for the project. He looks up at the farm, and in the distance he sees the cattle roaming on the farm. This gives him an idea. He would ask his grandfather if he could get the skin from the next animals that were to be butchered. So the next weekend they go back to the farm to continue working on the project. Josh gets the cattle skin from his grandfather and stitches it together. Chris finishes the legs and starts working on the rib-like torso made from steel rods. Josh pulls the skin tightly over the steel frame and brushes it with preservatives. They then attach the torso to the mechanized and now working legs. "It looks horrid," says Chris. Josh just looks at him and smiles broadly. During the week, Josh convinces Chris to add a head and arms to his project. And so the weekend comes and they create ridiculously long arms, the same combined length of both torso and legs. "What should we use as a head?" asks Chris. After some thought, Josh suggested using double sirens like the World War II warning sirens. After realizing that those sirens aren't in production anymore, they opt for more modern sirens. After some time, they finally get the sirens and attach it to the torso, welded against a spine-like metal rod. They add a radio and some batteries inside the torso and wire them to the sirens. The sound is so loud and eerie, but it works effortlessly. Josh isn't done with his crazy ideas just yet, and suggests adding an animal brain to the mechanical wiring, just to see if it could communicate with the rest of the body. Chris refuses and says it's a waste of time, as it will never be possible. During the week, Josh stays at the farm. One night he goes out with his grandfather to shoot foxes that are hunting the farm's cattle. A short while later, he takes one of the killed fox's carcass and carefully removes the brain and the brainstem. He then carefully places the brain in a big bowl filled with ionized water and some pig blood. He connects the wires to certain parts of the brain and connects them through a circuit board to the rest of the body, including the sirens. He then seals off the bowl and secures it to the torso. He didn't know what to expect, but after about an hour of waiting, he realizes that it isn't going to work. It's late. He is exhausted, so he goes to bed but is soon awakened by distant crackling shouts. Out of curiosity, he takes his torch and heads out in the direction from which the sounds are coming. He notices his heart racing, but doesn't think too much about it. There's something different in the air that he can't put his finger on. After walking for some time, the sounds change to what sounds like a bunch of laughing children, and then it stops. He starts to get concerned but heads back home. On his way home, he decides to check up on the project, but when he gets there, it's gone. Confused and a bit angry, he tries to see if there's anything else out of the ordinary. All of a sudden, he hears the sound of heavy sirens coming out of the woods to his right. His heart starts racing even more, and he feels a bit faint. He hears his name being called in between the whirling sounds of the sirens. He tries to go back home, but is drawn to the sound. He gets closer and closer to the forest. He can see something towering above the trees as it moves in the moonlight. The siren sounds are almost deafening now, and there it is. Josh can see what he had created. A 40 feet tall creature with mummified skin and human bone-like legs and long arms almost reaching the ground. The sirens towering above the trees, screaming. Josh is horrified. As he screams, the hand comes around and... No one ever saw Josh again after that weekend. even after month-long investigations. Siren Head, as the creature is called now, is still known to roam the forested and suburban areas, with only a few recent sightings. Thanks a bunch for watching. If you guys enjoyed, please hit the like button and consider subscribing for more stories.